Welcome back to the Big Fella Podcast. My name is Noah Tanner. I'm your host, and today I am joined by the multi-talented, dashingly handsome, and incredibly humble Jeff McCoy, good friend of mine who we actually met personally. He is a motivational speaker. He has a phenomenal life story that I can't wait to hear. I can't wait for him to share that with you today. And we're going to talk a lot about how to bring yourself out from your darkest point, how to overcome some of those accountability challenges, some of those consistency challenges that so many of us face, and how to overcome some behavioral habits that get ingrained into us when we don't have the right dialogue going on up top in the mind. If you are new here, my name is Noah. I've lost 110 pounds. I host the Big Fella Podcast. And Jeff and I are here to try to make the world a better place in our own unique ways. So I'm excited to have you on here to Jeff. Thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, brother.
Absolutely, man. Jeff is a super dope dude because we actually met because we have the same mentor. We have, we'll keep him anonymous for now because I don't know if he wants that publicity. Maybe he does. Who knows? But we have the same mentor, and we were introduced at the beginning of this year. And we met over breakfast a few months back, and Jeff told me his story, and it was super inspiring. So without further ado, Jeff, why don't you kind of tell the audience what your story's about, what you do, and we'll kind of just get kicked off from there, man.
Alrighty. My name is Jeff McCoy. I'm from Benton Harbor, Michigan. Born and raised. So a little bit about myself. I'm a nationally recognized speaker. I talk about resilience, mental health, overcoming adversity. I work with like schools and organizations and stuff like that. I talk to both teachers and students. My biggest thing is helping people identify their why and purpose in life. And I feel like once you do that, that's the key to unlocking just about anything you want to do in life. And you can get yourself out of any hole, any dark space, any bad time that you might be going through. Once you get that, that's the very first thing. A little bit about myself. I was born to a teenage mom. I was born into poverty. My mother lived on Section 8 housing. And so a lot of what I saw growing up was traumatic in a sense. I grew up seeing my mother be abused since I was probably 5 years old to about 7 or 8. She was alcoholic. I had a lot of alcoholic family members. It was a lot of stuff going on. My dad was in my life, but I didn't live with my dad. And so he could only shield me from like so much of that stuff. Fast forward to get into high school, I took a lot of that stuff with me to school. Unfortunately, I couldn't just, come to school and act like a different kid. And so I was always in trouble. I was that kid. I was whatever that kid is, when you're in school, I was that kid. I was the kid that was constantly doing bad stuff, always at the principal's office, always suspended. Parent-teacher conference, I was the kid that didn't want my mom to come up there and hear about the bad stuff I was doing. And along that time, though, I was also dealing with pretty bad anxiety and depression. I used to have panic attacks so bad that I was in and out the hospital. I got put on some antidepressants as well for a little bit. And in that same period of time, it was a lot of bad stuff. It felt like it was just stacking up. In that same period of time, my mom got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS, and they had told us that if it got bad enough, she wouldn't be able to walk again. And so, to culminate all of that, my high school experience, I ended up graduating with 16 D's and 16 F's a year late. And after that, me and my mom got into like a pretty senseless argument, and I ended up being put out. And so I was considered what's called hidden homeless. And so what hidden homelessness is, it's like homelessness with a condition. Essentially, you don't have a place to stay, but you don't have a permanent residence, but you are sleeping like couch to couch, in cars, on people's floors, stuff like that. And so I had to go live with my aunt, and I slept on a twin-size mattress in my little cousin's room on the floor. And so the turning point of my life is I had what I call my ceiling fan moment. I remember every day I used to wake up and look at the ceiling and look at the ceiling fan and just think about how bad my life sucked and like when I was gonna be valuable and when I was gonna get out of all the rough stuff that had happened throughout my life. And it was like something smacked me on the back of my head and told me that my life would not start to be valuable. My life wouldn't start to turn around until I valued it first. Like the world wouldn't treat me kind and give me everything that I was worth until I started to feel like I was worth something. And so essentially what I'm saying is the first step to getting out of any dark thing is you got to take ownership over your situation. Like regardless of what it looks like at the time and how grim your situation is, if you start to take ownership of that situation, even if you didn't put yourself there, like I said, a lot of the stuff I went through, it wasn't my fault. But even if you didn't put yourself there, when you start to take ownership, you take the keys back to your life. There's actually a tenet in social work that I later found out, and essentially the first principle to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or just any social work client relationship is there's a principle called to name it is to tame it. And essentially what that means is you got to identify that thing and say what it is and before you get the victory over it.
I love that. I love that. Name it is to tame it. I've been lucky enough to work with some pretty phenomenal human beings who have also, they've gone through different sobriety journeys, or they've gone through different addictions in life, and food can be addiction for a lot of people as well. But that's the first thing that I always tell anyone that I'm working with, or even just talking to, that's having a hard time, that's asking for a little bit of advice, is what's the problem? Do you know what the problem is, or are you just sitting here mindlessly suffering? Right? Because then to name it is to tame it. I love that, and I'm going to be stealing that. So shout out you, and shout out the counselors who rock through Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's a really great way to put it. If you don't know how to take, if you don't know what you need to be taking accountability for, how are you going to solve the problem? Like you can't find a solution until you have 100% clarity as to what exactly it is that you're doing. And I think that's the step zero of finding purpose, finding your why, as you say. I have a similar moment. I've shared this with quite a few clients, and I've posted on it intermittently throughout my journey. But the reason I got into fitness as a career, it was not my plan A. The cool thing about both of our journeys is that this was not our plan A. We just kind of fell into what we're doing. We were able to take care of ourselves, but it only started with maximum levels of accountability first. Right, it started with hitting that rock bottom moment, and for me, I had grown up heavy my entire life, and I was at my peak weight. I was probably pushing 320, 330 at some points, and I was dealing with a lot personally at the time. We had just lost somebody really close to our family, and I had to step up and take a lot of responsibility, and it shifted my how I kind of perceived myself, and I quickly realized I'm not a kid anymore. I'm an adult now. I was about 17, 18 at the time, and I realized that I needed to change, but I didn't. I kept kicking the can down the road, and that was from September all the way through the winter of 2018 and 2019, and then COVID hits in 2020. And I play a bunch of video games, have a bunch of fun, don't do anything for a few months because the whole world's shut down. Nobody knows what's going on. And then I step into the bathroom mirror one day, and I look at myself, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised with what I see. No, it's not necessarily a skinny physique, but I was probably 315. That's probably what I was looking at as far as weight-wise. And I took a progress picture just for fun, almost. And I kind of quickly realized as I hopped into the shower after I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, I have every hour of every day to do this. It's COVID. I don't know when this is going to shut down. I don't know when lockdown's going to end. If I cannot do this when I have all this time in the world, when the hell am I going to when I have a job and I have a life and bills to pay and all these other things? It's like there is no better time than now. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. It's right now, right? And so that's kind of the mindset that I adopted is no one is going to come to save me. And that mindset that a lot of people that people are lacking that mindset. They lack that accountability because it's uncomfortable to put that accountability onto yourself. And so I had kind of a similar aha moment with my weight, and then I had another similar moment when it came to starting my business. But I wanted to hear your perspective. I thank you for sharing, and I wanted to kind of just show that we've both had moments of like your ceiling fan moment, my aha moment. Like there comes to a point of no return. There comes a breaking point, effectively, right? And that's where things can get significantly worse. And we can talk about what that could look like. We could have a very stark, scary conversation about that because it's not pretty. And I know you and I have seen what that can look like. But when you get to the bottom, the bottom of the barrel, the darkest point of your life mentally and physically, whatever that might look like from your situation, talk about what you've noticed about breaking points, both within yourself, but also with other people, because you're focused around youth. So what you're trying to do is almost help youth prevent getting to that point. But I found a lot of very, very, that breaking point almost forces that accountability onto people. So I want to kind of hear your opinion on that and where that leads to when you direct that energy in the right way.
So the way I think about it is, optimally, like the best thing would to not get to a breaking point. Like hopefully, like you said, like I'm trying to keep people from getting there. But what I found very interesting is that, in a sense, people might not get their lives together until they hit that point. Some people, like myself specifically, I don't think I ever would have changed my life around if I didn't get to, like, cause so many bad things had happened, and I wasn't at a breaking point per se. But once I got to the point where I literally didn't have anything, like I was sleeping on that mattress, and a lot of my clothes and stuff like that had all got thrown away. Like I didn't have money. I didn't include, like, my car got repossessed. Like a million things that happened. It was like a switch flipped, and it was like, okay, if I don't do something now, this is how my life is going to be forever. And so, I say that to say, I know people personally that their life didn't start to change as well until they reached rock bottom. There's a famous saying, I don't know who quoted it, but he said, "Rock bottom is the perfect place to build on." But like you said, it also could go. I also know other people that it has put them in an even darker place when they got to their breaker point. And some people, they stay there a lot longer than they probably should, right? It could be like a really good catalyst for success, but it also could lead to their demise, unfortunately. I think the most important thing when you get there is probably mentorship. I was fortunate enough to know people, or to know of people that had been in situations very similar to mine, that had gotten out of that thing and ended up becoming successful. Had I not known those, I don't know if it would have went the same way, if I'm being honest. When I was going through all that stuff, random guy, I haven't talked to this guy since. I guess I was probably sharing, quick little story. I was probably sharing, sad memes and stuff like that on Facebook because I was depressed. And the guy reached out to me, and he was like, "Yeah, you seem like you're a little down," and he sent me Les Brown. And so I'm listening to Les Brown's inspirational tapes and stuff like that on YouTube. Ended up finding like Eric Thomas and stuff like that. And one thing I had realized was that they all had very similar moments. And so, although I didn't know them directly, like it was like a form of mentorship. It was like, okay, I seen somebody else get out of this thing, so it's possible for me too. But I think another layer inside of that is it wasn't just the fact that they were, I guess, my mentors per se. It was the fact that they sparked the belief inside of my head that it was possible to get past my breaking point. And I think that's the difference between staying in that space and actually coming out of that thing and becoming more successful and becoming a stronger person.
Yeah, I completely agree. It sometimes people who are approaching rock bottom or will hit the lowest point in their life, everyone's got different thresholds for what that really looks like. But the big thing that's almost getting in the way is their ego, from what I've seen. And I kind of seen this and experienced this personally, is you don't think you're at rock bottom when you're on the way to rock bottom. Like, yeah, you can acknowledge, stuff's tough, but you think that you got everything under control. And I feel like a lot of people fall into this pattern of like self-soothing or just not caring until their ego gets hit really hard and they get hit in a soft spot that they're not going to realize. That's when the rock bottom is like, oh, I've got some serious lessons to learn and I got to really change my behavior. Otherwise, this is not going to end pretty. I know for a fact that it has taken many people's lives, and it's a big reason, that lack of mentorship, that lack of community, that lack of self-awareness to be able to drop the ego and understand I got lessons to learn here. The struggle is a part of the journey, right? For me personally, I resonated very heavily with as a mentor for me, like visually off the internet. David Goggins, he's become a lot bigger since then, but he was a lot smaller at the beginning. And, some people have a lot of things to say about him, and I'm not here to talk about that. But I am here to talk about the fact that I saw somebody else who was the same weight I was just transform his life within a year because he had no other option to not do it. He was absolutely miserable. He was spraying for cockroaches, 320 pounds, hated his life, overweight, broke, doing a job that he hated, and then he saw a random Navy SEAL commercial on TV, and he's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure I can do this no matter what. And for that accountability to really set in, I think the first step to build back up from rock bottom is understanding that the struggle is not what makes you weak. It's how you bond with other people, right? The strongest bonds are usually found when you connect through the struggle, right? That's the people you feel closest to. Right, a lot of people, they call it trauma bonding or whatever. But when you can share and open up and say, I am dealing with this, I'm struggling with this, and when I can open up wholeheartedly to someone and they can resonate with that, and they can confide within each other, that's an avenue for growth. That is an avenue for companionship. That's an avenue for community and being heard. You can do that with maybe somebody who's in a better spot than you. That's what mentorship is. But even talking to your peers, so many guys that are younger nowadays have so much ego that they feel like it's not okay to talk to their friends. They're not okay to talk to their dad or their friends or their uncle or their neighbor or their coworker. And that's causing a lot of this isolation, and it's silently hurting so many men and women because they want everyone to think they're doing okay, and they're self-soothing, and they're convincing themselves that they're okay, and they're trying to convince other people that they're all right, even if they're not. Look at all the fiction. The struggle is a part of the game. Nobody has this life thing figured out. Look at Batman. Lost both of his parents as a kid, turned into fucking Batman. Watch any anime story. They usually have some sort of crazy, brutal, like they lose their family or something goes terribly wrong, and they use that to train and they use that to improve themselves. Now, ideally, you don't have to lose your parents and all this other stuff too. And, I'm not saying it's supposed to happen that way, but that's a part of exceptional growth, is the lessons that suffering will teach you are going to compound. You just have to accept the fact, like, all right, it's about to get really uncomfortable, and that's all right, because I'm already with a lot of discomfort. And I think that the biggest shift that I've been able to see, and what really quantified it in a very easy, like, mathematical way for me, is the pain of change worse than the pain of staying the same? When you were at your rock bottom, when you felt like you didn't have anything, and you were sleeping on that mattress, and you had that ceiling fan moment, and you realized something needed to change, and you needed to talk to some people and find some people and dig yourself out of this hole. Even though most of it wasn't your fault, it was largely due to, the things that happened to you from your upbringing. You chose not to have, malintent. You chose not to blame anybody else. You realized, okay, this is more uncomfortable than trying to change. So changing is going to be the less uncomfortable option. I'm going to go change this. And that's really what breaking points are all about. Is it's not a true breaking point until you decide changing this lifestyle is going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be less uncomfortable if I continue down this path.
I 100% agree. I remember vividly. I used to think to myself, well, because I ended up getting back in school, and that was part of my plan to get out of the situation I was in. But I remember getting to the point of when I used to write papers and have to do all those discussion boards and all of those things that I hate doing. I used to think, like, if I don't do this, then what is the alternative? Like, I don't have anywhere to go. Like, I don't have another plan. There isn't a plan B. Like, there's nothing to fall back on. Like, this has to work. Like, this literally has to work. And I used I used to touch on what I call my resilience resume. And essentially, no, I was not, like, I had never, like I said, I graduated with 16 D's and 16 F's. I had never written a paper before, an effective paper in my life. Nonetheless, like a 5 to 10 page paper. I hadn't did discussion boards. I was not accustomed to turning in homework, none of those things. And so all of that stuff was really hard to me. But what I had done is grew up in a house where I see my mom being abused, and I survived that. I didn't have rides to school, and somehow I got there every day. I survived that. I didn't have the tuition actually to pay for the college. Somehow I survived that. And I just say those things to say, although we might run into a lot of stuff that we don't feel like we are accustomed or trained or even qualified to be doing, we've probably survived much worse stuff in our past. And like you were talking about, like, you've had dark days. You remember looking at yourself and being overweight and stuff like that. And in my case, like, it'll be like the ceiling fan moment stuff, like sleeping on those floors. Although we might, at some point, we're going to run into something we haven't done before and might almost feel like a sense of imposter syndrome. But we've done much harder stuff. And so you pull from your resilience resume, like, I might not have done this, but I've done harder things than this before.
That's something I try to remind people all the time if I'm trying to give them a little bit of a pep talk. It's like, you've done harder shit than this. Like, this is not anything, like, yeah, it's new, but this is not anywhere close to the hardest thing you've ever done. Pony up. Let's go. And a lot of people have a pushback for that kind of mentality. You've been hit harder than this. Get up. Like, that's the mindset you need to have sometimes. And I feel like there's so much noise out there on social media now saying, like, oh, there's the right and wrong way to be motivational. It depends on what you resonate with, truly. And I think the hardest part of inspiring other people to change, right? I've been talking about it a little bit more, and I'm trying to do better at showing more of that vulnerability. I have had a lot of my life affected by suicide. I've lost a lot of people, and a lot of relationships have been tremendously damaged in my life because of suicide and people near me either attempting or what have you, right? And so that's a different discussion for a different day. But because of that, and talking to other people in my life who've been affected by suicide and how I've been affected by suicide, those are people at the rock bottom. Mm-hmm. Those are people who don't see a way out. And not everyone is going to resonate the same way, right? I love Eric Thomas. I think he's a fantastic motivator. I like David Goggins, and I know a lot of people don't. And I know a lot of people don't resonate with him, and I'm sure there's stuff that I disagree with him on. But you can take motivation from a lot of different sources. You just have to find a way. You have to find something that works best for you. You need to find something that is communicated in a way that you can understand, and I think that's what most people are missing. They're not open enough to change, to hearing the same lessons, just said in different ways, because I mean, Jeff, your story is incredibly inspiring, and I brag about you anytime I can. If anytime I have somebody that is going through something, or I think likes your message, I always try to point them towards you, because I think you've been through so many hardships that people think you can't come out of, and you have. And it really just comes down to being open to listening to new people with different perspectives. So many of us, this wonderful little machine right here, our telephones and social media specifically, are creating echo chambers of the stuff that we're used to consuming all the time, right? Like if you want to learn about a certain topic, you search it once on Instagram. That's your entire explore page for the next week, dude. And that's just going to create this echo chamber of stuff that you already like to listen to or stuff that you want to hear that's going to reinforce your existing beliefs. And that is a very, very, very dangerous precedent for younger people or people of any age who are on those platforms on a regular basis, right? For the people that are feel like they're at rock bottom or approaching rock bottom and they don't know where to go, they just need to hear the words of inspiration. They need to hear the words of you or me or Eric Thomas or David Goggins, who are telling them change is possible. Take accountability and come up with a plan. Figure out what the main problem is first, right? All these action steps, but it's about how it's communicated. The communication style is something that I've really been obsessing over. So with the people that you've worked with the younger audiences, with some of the older audiences you worked with, when it comes to displaying some of these messages to them and really trying to make sure it hits them so they can understand it to their core, how are you changing your message when you're talking to different groups of people, and what have you found resonates the hardest? Like, you do a really good job of sharing your story, 16 Ds, 16 Fs, and that resilience resume is baller. I think that's a really good packaging. But how do you get people to open up and get them to really receive your message?
So, I think the first part is anywhere I go, anytime I go somewhere, I'm trying to make sure I understand who my audience is, right? Because I'm not going to talk to the oldest crowd I've ever talked to. I've talked to a bunch of retired, very affluent women in Berrien County. Like, I'm not going to talk to them the same way I would talk to a youth group at the Boys and Girls Club, And so, first off, I'm trying to know my audience, and then I kind of pick and choose which parts of my life I want to pull from. The I guess bright side of having so much bad stuff happen to me, I'm pretty sure I can find a story that every person at every stage in their life can relate to, and the biggest thing is just being authentic. Before I would even, I consider myself now a professional speaker, but before I would have considered myself a professional speaker, I used to just do random speaking opportunities around town. And one of the places I went to was called the 𝕀ℕ𝕊𝕋𝕸𝕂. And so the 𝕀ℕ𝕊𝕋𝕸𝕂 essentially is you're going to do a presentation, you and a group of other people, and you have 20 slides, right? And you have 20 seconds per slide, and it moves on automatically, whether you're done talking about the slide or not. And so I did my 𝕀ℕ𝕊𝕋𝕸𝕂, and essentially the presentation was called Adversity University, right? And so I went over it, and I went over a few different things in my life that I was going through and some of the stuff I overcame. And when I got done, I got a standing ovation, whatever, and as I'm walking through the crowd, a lot of people are walking up to me, hey, you did so good, stuff like that. Kind of expected, and the thing that I'll never forget this, it caught me off guard. I had a really, almost late to middle-aged white guy. He was telling me how he owns boats. He has several houses, he's very affluent, very rich. And he walked up to me in tears. And essentially he was asking me, how do he find his purpose in life and understand his why. And mind you, like I said, this guy's very affluent and had all those things going on. And it wasn't even his question per se that threw me off. It was the fact that we were so different, and yet he connected with my message still. And so it was like, as long as I be authentic, I feel like every human being can relate to the human element of my struggle and getting to where we are today. Especially if they're American, because we that's kind of like hampered into our ideals. We feel like if you work hard, you're supposed to get whatever you want in life. And so, but yeah, authenticity essentially is the secret sauce, I guess.
Definitely. I think it ties into the, lead with vulnerability first, lead with your authentic self first, show that you're not perfect and that you struggle with things, and that's going to make other people feel really welcomed. What did you say to that older gentleman?
So a lot of what we talked about was finding out what he actually was passionate about. So he owned some type of, I almost want to say, like landscaping or something, businesses, something that made a lot of money, but he was not actually passionate about. And then he was. We talked a little bit about like religion and spirituality and stuff like that. He had questions about like religious stuff, and so what I ended up telling him was one of the first things I recommended him was to do a personality test. And so they have several free personality tests. One is called like 16 personality tests, and essentially what'll end up coming out of there is not just the personality test, but it talks about things that you might be interested in doing. And so they make us take them when we want to become social workers. And so what you'll find out is that there are several professions on there that you might be passionate about. And so I sent him that direction, and hopefully he found one that he might be, because he has so much money, he probably could do like whatever he wants to do in life at this point, like barring any like educational training or something. But there were several things that he could have did on there that would give his life like a feeling of purpose.
I got you. I got you. That's what's up, man. That's what's up. I think the big question about like I think that's really prominent too, because a lot of people view their solutions is just more money. And obviously the economy's in kind of a wacky spot right now. I think everyone's kind of aware of that, but money is not the answer to a lot of your suffering. I come from a middle to lower middle class family. I'm incredibly grateful. I always had presents on Christmas, food or food in my stomach, roof over my head, that kind of thing. And my parents, I feel like I won the lottery with my parents, because they tried their hardest, and that's all I could ask. And I know for a fact that they went multiple days, sometimes skipping dinner, not eating meals. Sometimes, some of the bills got cut off because we were late on bills, different things like that. And seeing that as a kid screwed me up because I didn't want to see them hurt that much. And so I made financial security and financial, just personal finance a very big part of my life when I was younger, when I was 18, 19. And I'm really glad I did. It's paid off so far, and that's helped, having that knowledge of investing and budgeting and staying away from of toxic credit card practices and not spending money you don't have and not trying to flex money that trying to impress strangers for no reason whatsoever, and all these things. I could rant about that all day, but I quickly realized, whether I was working a job or whether we had a good month or a bad month with the business, no matter what, that did not change my inner dialogue. I have had moments where I was making just over minimum wage, where I felt super stress-free and happy, and I've had moments where I was making my best month ever, yet I was constantly stressed out and freaking out over things that ultimately were outside of my control. So I guess as we kind of hit the last topic of today's conversation, because I would love to have you on again in the future, what would you say are some of the key things that a lot of people are missing for finding that why, finding that purpose, to somebody who's watching this who might think money is the solution, or they might think that they're approaching this rock bottom and they don't know what to do about it. What would you say, in your experience? What would you say to somebody who just doesn't know how to find that why?
I'd say honestly, focus on the thing that you are most passionate about in life. And I mean, like, I wouldn't be able to live if I didn't have this thing, and go after it. And I honestly say go after it in spite of whatever you might currently be doing. See, a lot of times we feel like we're not in a position to chase after whatever we're passionate about because we worried about like, like financial security, keeping a roof over our head, or you might even feel like that particular career field isn't lucrative enough for you to like maintain a good living. When you go after stuff you're passionate about, you'll do it so well that people will pay you for it. We living in a country right now that I'm getting paid to speak. I mean, like very literally. Like my passion is to help people get out of dark places and find their why and stuff like that. And I'm doing it so well. I don't know if I've shared this with you, but you're a big part of why I'm at where I'm at now. Like some of the advice that you've given me, and my very first professional speaking contract, I got offered $8,000 to do a presentation. And so I'm saying that to say, chase after your passion, chase after what make you happy, because when you get to the end of life, right, you don't want to be laying there thinking like, yeah, I did go to my job every day for 50, 60 years, and I never traveled and I never did what made me happy. I just went to work. You know what I'm saying? That's not even really living at that point. And so, yeah, chase after your passion.
Dude, I just want to pour into you for a second because when we first met, it was like January or February of this year. So we're coming on almost a year of knowing each other. And I remember even when we spoke then, you were still kind of making that identity shift of, I don't think you were really calling yourself a professional speaker at that point just yet. Like that was something you had speaking gigs, but you were still working another job. You were still saying like, I want to be, and when we were talking with our mentor, he was like giving you some, I just remember that. So I just want to pour into you. I'm super proud of you, man. That is freaking awesome. As somebody who did his first public speaking gig not too long ago, it's not easy. It is not easy. Even if you know what you're talking about, even if you're prepared, even if you've got everything, there's still some nerves that you just won't be able to control. And the audience means a lot depending on who you're talking to. So you have helped me just as much in realizing that I can do this and I can figure it out too. So the last thing that I want to kind of touch on with finding your passion and do what you're passionate about. I've had some of these conversations with clients, with family members, and with friends. Our shared mentor, actually helped me with this one, and I thought it was super profound. If you don't know what you are passionate about, if you don't know what you like to do, if you feel like you are lacking hobbies, first of all, get the fuck off your phone, because that's probably what it's doing, okay? So maybe first have a thought that's organically to your mind and not thinking other people's thoughts for you. That's the first part. But to be a little bit more serious here, our mentor told me he uses this guiding light of who do you want to serve? Because most people have an inherent desire to help others, right? Whether those others are friends, family members, other people like them, complete strangers who have a common shared struggle. Like we said, people connect over a shared struggle. So I started out this business with wanting to find and help other guys who were struggling with their weight, and who were struggling with food noise, and they didn't know how to diet, and they didn't know how to, and that's who I built this business around. And in today's day and age, it's never been easier to start a business or start a side hustle and monetize those passions. And there's some pros and cons to that as well. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but you and I are examples that it can happen to regular people. It can happen to people who go through tremendous hardships and they can still come out the other side and make a living for themselves doing what they love and having that level of fulfillment that they're actually making an impact. You're making people cry, dude. That's good. That shows that that the message is resonating, even like you said, with people who aren't necessarily like you, right? That's a testament to your talent, and I think that's just a closing message to a lot of other people who are trying to post on social media or start a side hustle or figure out what they want to do with their life, how they want to spend their free time. They want to get off their phones. Find who you want to serve. That's going to be, and if you can find specifically people who have struggled with the stuff that you struggle with, It's gonna be, you're gonna wake up every day excited to do something towards that goal, right? And then that's gonna evolve, and then you're gonna get better, and you're gonna screw up, and you're gonna embarrass yourself. Who gives a shit? Who
Right.
gives a shit? Embarrassment ain't nothing. When you've hit rock bottom already, embarrassment is the cost of entry. Embarrassment's a phenomenal teacher. Another thing that I think I've seen you hammer it home quite a bit in some of your speeches and some of your content on Instagram is have the mindset of a student. Always trying to be learning, always try to be connecting and picking up the pieces and connecting information, and always have a mentor to learn from, and never think you know everything, because the moment you think you know everything is the moment you know nothing. So, Jeff, tell people where they can find you, tell people how they can book you in as a speaker, and give them the rundown, man. Give them a final message, and give them a moment of inspiration to leave with.
Alrighty. Yeah, my name is, like you said, I'm Jeff McCoy. You can find me at jeffmccoy.org. That's my website. You can book me at Jeff McCoy, JEFFMCCOY.org. And you can find me on every social platform at jeffmccoy.inspires. Again, that's jeffmccoy.inspires. And one message I just want to leave everybody with is that there are people that won't get to where they need to be in life until you get to where you need to be in life. And I'm going to say that again. There are people that will not achieve their dreams and get to where they need to be in life until you achieve your dreams and get to you where you need to be in life. And I can say that applies directly to Noah, because the information that Noah has given me has helped boost my career in ways he probably doesn't even know. But remember that.
We're going to have to talk about that more, because now I'm curious. But that is an absolute banger line, and I will be stealing it. So I'm going to be unapologetically probably posting it on my stories later. I will tag you, though. I will tag you. I'm not too much of a thief, I promise. But, Jeff, man, thank you for coming on, brother. I'm so happy to see all the success that's been coming your way. I think you've got a phenomenal message. Keep sharing it. If anybody, like I said, if you guys want to look at more of his stuff, check out his links below. They will be in the description along with all the normal goodies. I've got plenty of guidance. In the description, I will have a 25-day free email course that goes over everything you're going to need for a weight loss journey, yes, but a lot of the dialogues that we talked about today about finding your why, about building accountability, about identifying your problem and where to build from the ground up. Like kind of Jeff said, the best place to build up from is rock bottom. That is a real thing. So if you want to learn more of those mental systems, more of those accountability purposes to change your life permanently, check the link in the description. That free email course will be in the link in the bottom, along with all of Jeff's links. Thank you all so much for watching. We both love you to death. Keep it simple, big fella.